So let's get started. Thank you, DJ. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It's very exciting to be here. I've been to India many times in the last 15 years. I've actually been at Infragistics for 16 years. This is probably 30th time I've been to India at least. And it's amazing what's the transformation happening in India. And it's all because of you and what you're bringing forth in technology. And then, of course, learning it at events like this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening in India. Then I'm going to talk about UX and show some demos. The internet is actually pretty slow, so we'll see how that works out, but I'm sure something will be good here. So what's happened over the last few years is India's gone through major digital transformation as a country, just like the businesses that many of you work for. So, and many of your businesses maybe haven't gone through digital transformation yet because maybe they're a little lagging. But to move a country with over 1 billion people like India is actually very challenging. But the government, once they put their mind to it, it ends up being something that's pretty interesting. And when you look at the overall internet growth in India, it's what's driving digital transformation. Without connectivity, without the ability to use mobility, to access the internet and do all this stuff, digital transformation could never happen. The government couldn't have all these programs in place. But it's really interesting that in India, 60% of the population by 2021 will be connected. And if you compare that to the US, we're at 38%. So when you think about a very high-tech country like the United States and in India, where there's still a lot of people that live in villages with no electricity and there's all these other challenges, that's actually pretty impressive. The other challenge you have is all the languages and dialects. So when you write something, you have to take that into consideration in your mobile app, your web app, etc. But the interesting stat is the digital ID in India has gone to #1 in the world. And it's been in this super compact amount of time. And again, that's because the government said, we need to make this happen. We need to move the country forward. But none of that is really possible without bandwidth. So yes, I'm here today. I'm using my phone. I'm on 3G. But still, when you look at the average use in India of bandwidth and the amount of traffic that's going through, it's continuing to grow. The number of subscribers are continuing to grow. The nice thing that's happened in India is that there's smaller companies that have started to push bandwidth, and that makes the bigger companies have to respond, react, be more competitive, lower costs, et cetera. It's still amazing to me how inexpensive bandwidth is here in India compared to the rest of the world, and I can pretty much get connectivity everywhere. And by connectivity, I'm doing things like, of course, Instagram, Facebook, bank account, surfing the web, using Google. So all the core things that basically we need to survive every day, you can do on your mobile phones. And then the devices, again, we start looking at, you're at home, you're sitting there on Friday night, you're thinking, I just went to NG India, I'm going to write a progressive web app because there's 2 great talks on it here today. I want to get a mobile app out there. Who's going to use it? Well, there's 2 billion connected devices in India that will use your app, and that is more than there are people. There's average more devices per person than there are people. So you end up getting a very compelling argument on the positive side for going with mobility, going with connectivity, feeling that maybe 5 years ago or 8 years ago you couldn't write an app that could be ubiquitous with connectivity. Well, now you can because the devices are actually there. So all in all, my message is there's a ton of opportunity in India. And I did a talk about this last year, and I actually have like 50 slides on all these great statistics and all these things, but that was last year. So now this year what we're going to talk about is how user experience ties into the apps that you're going to build. So today you're going to see a lot of code, you're going to see a lot of demos, and then you're going to have to somehow make it look good. And while most of you, how many people are actually designers in the room today? Okay, so not many. How many people think they have a good sense of color and taste? All right, so then if you look to the guy next to you who raised their hand, see how they're dressed, what kind of socks, do they match their belt and their shoes, So that's how we figure all this stuff out, right? But But the whole point is that UX and usability matter. It is a driving factor in differentiation and profits and revenue. So McKinsey, which is a humongous consulting company in the US, they do this McKinsey forecast every year, and it's like 38% of companies that are at a certain level of user experience, user research, their profits are 20% more than their closest competitor. And when you're talking about billions of dollars, that's enormous. When I'm at any SI, you name it, and many of you may work for a software integrator in India, the UX practices are huge. We were at a meeting yesterday, and one of the software integrators has 3,500 UX people here in India and near shore. I mean, that's incredible. And what that means, now they have 89,000 software developers, but still, that ratio is still pretty good, but it also means that that's a differentiating go-to-market. So we look at this app that many of you could pretty much throw together in no time. This is not how you can move forward in the future. So apps like this, there's a website called webpagesthatsuck.com, and they have hundreds of great examples of how not to build a website. And so I won't go into many examples like this, but the point is this was perfectly acceptable 15 years ago. You know, it was okay, you know what, lots of colors, get their attention, whatever, but that's really not the way that we can move forward. So what happens is a lot of times you go to work, you open up your desk, and this is the feeling that you have if you're using your HR app. You have to put in your vacation days, or maybe you go to an app, a mobile app that you use that your company uses. The problem is a lot of this is what we feel like a lot. It's up to us to change it. It's up to us to make sure that this is not how your customers feel, and then you can change this as well in your own environment, in your own work. When you think about what Steve Jobs has done over the last 25, 30 years with really looking at simplicity and user experience, and the funny thing is, when they first released the iPhone, he had no idea the type of success it was going to be, but what he did know is that he was giving a talk at an event, and everyone had their phones, and all they did was complain about their phone. So he said, how can I make this thing simpler to work with and easier and blah, 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 and it ends up every quarter since the iPhone's released, they sell about 30 or 40 million iPhones. Think about that. For the last 12 years, every 4 months, so that's 120, 130 million iPhones a year that are being sold. So this is obviously probably the largest consumer product, but when you look at how Android responded and Google responded, now those are amazing user experiences. I don't know if you caught this week, but Samsung just announced the Galaxy Fold. So they are releasing it, it's a foldable phone, and it goes from a 10 or 11 inch to whatever, 13-inch tablet, I don't know. But it's pretty sweet. And you look at that and you're like, holy crap, now we're at this another level where there's going to be a huge breakthrough in how we can be productive with these devices, because this is how we want to feel every day. We want to feel excited, we want to feel good, we want to look forward to using these things because this is our life. Everything we own, everything we do is about our mobile phone, all of our friends, all of our personal stuff, etc. So a lot of times, if we think about what user experience could be in its simplest term, it's if I have to open this can of soup, certainly I could do it with many blunt objects. But what I really want to do is have something that's fine-tuned and made to specifically open that can of soup. So when you're building and designing a screen and someone's trying to check out an order on an e-commerce site, there's 100 ways to do it. How do you actually get to that right answer? Well, that's all part of a UX process and ensuring that there's usability in what you're delivering. So when we talk about usability, 50% of people really think about this as helping me do my job better and faster. And that's really what you need to think about. A lot of what we talk about at Infragistics is doing user research, including customers and everything that we design. So we design something and then we go test it with users. And we have tools that help you do that. We have usability testing tools and whatnot. But the whole idea is getting iterative feedback on those designs so then we can improve it before we release it. An interesting fact is that you only need between 8 and 12 people to give you feedback on a design to get 85% of the problems with that design. And you don't need to achieve or resolve every problem the first time. You can fix a few things and then go test it again. You're going to find a few more things, then test it again. You find a few more things, then test it again. So the point is, when we talk about usability, people get really nervous. We could take just the people in the front row, take any application that anyone has on their phone, and we could find most of the usability problems with that with just that group of people. So it's not something that's insurmountable, and it's not something that has to be overly complex. And when we talk about user experience, it really is more than that usability thing, because how we experience something does tie in things like we have on the right-hand side, the appeal side: pride, attractiveness, design, aesthetics, joy, desire. It's no different when you go shopping. If you go to the store that has very good displays and the clothes that would look good on me, you're going to go in there and buy it. You go to a store that has everything stacked up everywhere and you can't really see and you got to dig through stuff, you're probably not going to find what you want. So the appeal ends up being very significant in how we respond to things when we're using applications, when we're using mobile apps, etc., which is why user experience ends up being something that's a little bit more all-encompassing. So when we think about how all these things converge, what you need to do is get to that first love quadrant. So on the lower left is please shoot me. Many of you have those please shoot me experiences. There's nothing like, your friend says, oh, download this app, and you click it, and you download it, and you don't even know how to get started. You're like, what a waste of time. How many times have we downloaded apps from the app stores and they're pointless? How many times have we tried to use a website and you're just like, why did they do it this way? And that's that whole please shoot me experience. So this is typical. Another graph from web pages that suck, or websites that suck. Now, day job, we talk about pure usability. If you have a PhD in human-computer interaction and you go buy the book, you will most likely build the best usable apps in the world, because in your mind, usability is all that matters. But then when you talk to a visual designer, someone who has that artistic side, they're going to say, you just can't make it usable. So while apps like this probably function really well, they're missing that whole side of that graph, which is the appeal side. And the appeal ends up being very significant in what we deliver. And it can't be just eye candy. This, if you guys remember when browsers first supported Flash or whatever, there was a lot of 3D stuff, 3D boxes, things floating around. Managers love 3D pie charts. So even today, they want 3D. So when you guys go there, you need to show that there's 3D and then have the 2D stuff come later that really shows you the data, and you can do drill downs and analytics and stuff. But that eye candy only goes so far because it really doesn't give you what you need. Now, this app is a little bit of an old screenshot, but Mint was a company. It was eventually acquired by Intuit, I believe. But they brought together that usability and that functionality. And people loved Mint. It was one of these apps that grew really fast in the beginning, and I'm sure you all have examples of apps like that. So now we're all here at NG India, and we're talking about Angular and all that stuff, and there's only like 3 designers in this entire hotel right now. So how can you do better? So what we've done at Infragistics is we've looked at design systems and how we can bring design systems together with our products to help people build apps faster. Now, our whole product, and you can go talk to the folks outside later during the breaks, we'll be here all day, is really about tying Angular specifically to a UX design process. So the design system really represents this language, a familiar language that you can use across your teams and with your customers that defines how you move forward with your work or with your applications. Now, design systems, again, are fairly new, maybe a few years old. The name started becoming very popular. But before it, we had patterns libraries, and we had all these other things that we could use to help us drive sort of this consistent design language across our products and with our customers. But above all, what happens with design systems is they end up being this single source of truth. So when we talk about design today, what is that single source of truth? Is it what you tweaked yesterday because you needed to change some CSS or some color, or is there something backing that actually is how we stand and how we move forward with this stuff? it's no different than writing code. You guys have patterns libraries, you have libraries of reusable utilities, and the minute someone changes something, yeah, that downstream effect could break thousands of applications, so you have to be really careful, but the tools and technology today make it pretty easy to do this stuff. So Indigo Design is actually a product that we ship, which encompasses this whole concept of design, prototyping, but the cool part is it will take whatever you design and it'll make it into an Angular application. There is a concept called an atomic design model, and that sort of is the underpin of many design systems today. I would argue that the design system really isn't a design system unless you have some real-world object on the other end. So anyone in here can go and create a design system in Photoshop and say, hey, here's my UI kit, here's my design system. But ultimately, you want to make sure that whatever you design can get built. So many of you are at work and you're developers and you work with a design team. How many times have you gotten a design and you're like, there's no way we can build this. It's impossible. This doesn't map to any component we have. We've never built anything like it. And then the designer's like, well, we don't want to be restricted by, components in the real world. We need to just think outside the box. And it's like, yeah, that's great, but we also need to deliver software. So by marrying components with the visual aspect, you can do something pretty unique and special. So an atomic design model, and there's articles and blogs and books about this, but essentially it goes through this idea that there's atoms, molecules, organisms, templates, and pages, and the actual atom is the smallest fundamental piece that could make up something. So it could be like a primitive, like a line in Photoshop or in Sketch, or something that you would actually render on a canvas in Angular with a path. And then molecules, you start putting these atoms together, you get richer things, and then organisms might be richer things like a combo box with a drop down and a drop down button, and then you get templates and pages. So bringing all this together, we can help accelerate driving that to market. So with Indigo Design, I'm going to show you this in Sketch real quick, but we've done that with our product. So we take everything that you can build and we put it into a Sketch UI kit. And a UI kit Sketch is a vector drawing tool. It's like Photoshop. It's super popular today. It's really cheap and inexpensive and does a good job. But the idea is with Sketch, I can design whatever I want. It's sort of just like Visual Studio. Drag and drop stuff, and then you're kind of done. But the nice thing is, when you layer on what you can do with the design system and branding and theming, you can create very beautiful things with this with very little work. And then ultimately, we have a cloud service that lets you do some sort of prototyping. But what's cool is you can actually pop up our plugin in Visual Studio Code and then generate Angular code from whatever those designs were. So we're trying to accelerate how you go from this idea from the design team down to the code. And that's where UX comes into play. This doesn't solve every single problem. You still have to write a bunch of code. But for developers, mostly the hardest thing is layout, it's CSS, and it's trying to make it at least look like what the designer did. You can write code all day long, and you're really good at it. What you're not good at is the pretty stuff. And so this is where tools companies like Infragistics and with NativeScript, what Progress is doing, accelerate some of that beauty into your applications, because you don't want to waste time doing this all day. You want to write code. And we hear that over and over and over again. So in our product, in our Angular product, we have all of these components and directives, and they all have a twin in the design system that you can do in Sketch. So anything that you want to do in Angular, you can go ahead and do in Sketch, and I can go ahead and get code. So let's take a look at how this works. So what I did is I have to run NPM. So I started doing that like 10, 12 minutes ago before I came up here, and it's probably done by now. So I'm not going to do that level of watching me type NPM, but I'm going to walk you through some things and show you what the output would look like. So for example, well, one thing I want to highlight is there's a website called Dribbble. It's dribble.com. Yeah. Oh, hold on. Mirror, all right. So now we're good. So now you should see my display. Cool. So there's a website called Dribbble. And Dribbble is this haven for designers. And what they do is they do all these beautiful things, and they share them with their community. And so there's thousands, there's probably millions of designs up in Dribbble. What we did at Infragistics is we created a bunch of designs in Dribbble, but every single thing in Dribbble can be generated code in Angular. So there's nothing that's in our Dribbble site that you can't pixel perfect get the output in Angular. Some of them are super simple. They're like a single screen. But if you want to go check Dribbble out, and it doesn't have to be just for the Infragistics stuff, there's just so many inspirational ideas up here, you can go ahead and check it out. But what it does is it just kind of kickstarts some of that inspiration and whatnot for what you need. So our Dribbble handle, because our product name is called Indigo Design, we're at dribbble.com/Indigo Design without that period. And we did a quick contest internally, and we tried to get to like 30 or 35 drawings up there. So there's a bunch of stuff. But so how did something like this, for example, start? Something like this design. This design actually starts with our design system in Sketch. So if I go ahead and I open up Sketch, and if you've never seen Sketch before, this will be a pretty cool lesson. Essentially, Sketch is, as I mentioned, a vector drawing tool. So it allows you to drag and drop things from a series of toolboxes, for lack of a better word, and then drag those onto a page. So this specific app is an app that we have on our website. You can go ahead and download it. We have the full Angular app as well on our website. So if you want to learn Angular, and you want to just, by dissecting an existing app which has a whole bunch of screens, it has login screens, menus, master details stuff, whatever, you can go ahead and grab this off of infragistics.com. But what you'll notice, and it's kind of hard to see just because of my screen resolution, but on the right hand side, this is actually all of what makes up all of these drawings. So there is a hierarchy of elements that make up everything on this screen, and you'll see something here called an IGX grid. You'll see that it has a data source property. Down here we've got another IGX grid, and over on the right hand side there's a bunch of properties and things that you can set. The point is, none of that would be available normally inside Sketch. We created these UI kits, we extended Sketch, and we made this all work. But the neat thing is, if you drop in and you want to add any of these components, these are all of those Angular components that I had on that one slide where there was like all what Infragistics offers. And then what we did is we customized them and added different options. So for example, here's one type of calendar. I'll just move this over a little bit. Let me insert something like, you want to do an avatar. Here's an avatar. Now if I click that avatar, the avatar actually has like data properties, event properties, all these things inside Sketch, which you would normally not get, and those will flow through into generated code. And then we took it a step further, and we added a bunch of patterns. So if I want to do a quick, product form, we've got different patterns, and these patterns are made up of all of those atomic widgets. So everything is cobbled together into these designs. You're dragging and dropping and blah, blah, blah. So now that I have this in Sketch, what we do is a couple things. We actually have a theming plugin. So we have our default colors, but let's say that you want to create a new theme that has different color sets and different primary colors and different secondary colors, etc. You can go ahead and customize that. You can do things like customize the typography. You're not limited to our themes, and that's the whole point, is that you may have 20 customers because your division is working with 20 customers. You need 20 UI kits based on their patterns. Just because you're doing work for a JP Morgan doesn't mean that Exxon, which is an oil company, wants the same patterns or has the same patterns. So you can create all of your own patterns, and they can just magically show up in Sketch, and you could build things along the way. So what I did is I wanted to actually generate this screen in Angular to show you how this whole thing works. So I actually started running it earlier, but I'll still walk through the whole process. So you can see this guy has completed successfully. So it compiled and everything is good and it's running. But what happens is, in Visual Studio Code, we have a plugin which launches just a simple dialog, and you can paste in a URL, or we're adding this thing where you log in, and that is the link to that design in the cloud. So that sketch design we just saw, you would sync it with the cloud, and then there's a URL for that, and now I want to generate code for that actual screen. So here, if I click one of the guys that are in the cloud, it's that budget app that we just looked at. It's going off to the internet right now to Azure, not Azure, we're using Amazon Web Services for this particular product, cloud service. So this is going to go up, and it grabs that design, and then it brings it into the plugin. And then what this does is it renders each one of those screens in this plugin. And the cool thing is, as you hover over the screen, you'll see that those are all specific elements that can be code generated, and they all show up here on the right-hand side. So if I go to that budget management screen, I can drill in here, and I can choose to generate the code for the whole screen or just parts of the screen. Now, when you generate code and you're doing Angular, there's a few things that would help, like what's the module name, what's the model object name. What's cool is in Sketch, I said this thing needs a data source called budget data. I actually have a data source called budget data in my Angular app, and all I would do at this point is say generate code assets. So then it goes off to the cloud, it generates those code assets, and it injects it right into my app. So what it actually did was it generated actually four pieces. The first piece it generated was the HTML. So this is the HTML that it got out of that. And how does it know how to make this HTML and how to lay it out? It's because it was all defined in Sketch. There's layout, there's those artboards. So here, if I scroll up, you'll see that, whoops, this is that IGX grid that I had highlighted in Sketch, and it just created this right here inside of the app. CSS, this would make any developer just probably a tear of joy right now, just seeing that all this CSS you never have to write again. Just use this thing and you're done. Yeah, pretty awesome. And then, of course, your test module and the TypeScript. So there's a couple things that, because it's not complete magic, there's a couple things that you have to do when the code gets generated. The first thing is we saw that there was a data source, so we add the import for the data source as a comment. You have to go and just uncomment it just to make sure that the app will build. And then the other thing is we don't necessarily know how you're loading your data. So in this case, I had to create an instance of my budget data object, and then there's a function called populate, which populated that object. So going through this all took, it takes like literally 30 seconds. If you try this at home tonight, it goes very quick. And then what we end up with on the output is the exact same screen, and it's actually with real data. This is a real grid with selectable cells. These are real buttons. These are real inputs, and these are real buttons. So without you having to really write any code, you wrote a couple lines of code, you can go from something that's a design system that allows you to design something with a predefined set of rules, with the visual language that your company agrees upon or your teams agree upon, and then output that to code very easily. So that's the Indigo Design product. If you want to learn more, you can talk to Vishrut outside today at the booth. But the other thing that we do, which also helps developers, is we have a command line interface which sort of goes to what you learned in the native script talk earlier, was that, if you're not familiar with Angular, you're doing everything from a command line. Angular schematics make things super easy, so things like ng-add, ng-update, like Angular 4 to 5 was a nightmare. Now Angular 6 to 7 is ng-update, boom. If your third-party vendors did everything correctly, or your open source vendors, it just works. So now you can seamlessly continue on this upgrade path. So what we did, or what I did, was I just ran a quick example of our CLI, and to show you what the output looks like, this is what the output looks like. So this is a full app with all the code. It has a data grid with some data and a bunch of features in it. Looks really nice. It has a data chart with a bunch of different chart types that you can go ahead and mess around with. But the point is, for me to build all of this, I didn't have to do anything. I actually just ran the CLI, and then things just sort of worked for me really nicely. Here's another data grid, some nice features, column pinning, column unpinning, column hiding, etc. These are all just things that I can do. So as a developer, you may not want to get into Sketch, but you still want to get kick-started with a design language. And the Infragistics product is it's material-based. It's based on a design language already, but we pull in all of these UI kits and design systems also into our CLI. So in Visual Studio Code, the way this works is if I just do a new window, we have a quick shortcut, and I'll just type in IG, and then it kicks off the Infragistics CLI. The way you would install our CLI is just npm install ignite UI-CLI, and then you get this little shortcut, IG. So I can name my project. I'll name it NG India, and it'll ask me just questions. What kind of app do I want? What kind of theming do I want? Do I want to add a component? I want to add a grid. Let me add a custom grid. I'll call it grid 1, etc. And then what kind of features do I want for that grid? So you can go ahead and say, I want to do column pinning, column moving, and we're going to just generate all this code for you, and you can continue to add components. So I'll add a chart real quick just to show you how that works. And we'll add a category chart, and I'll call it cat 1. And then I'll just do a complete and run. What port do I want to run it on? And we'll do 4900. But essentially, it's going to go off and do npm. But that output that I just showed you is exactly the type of stuff you would get. So if you can't, like, the only problem with Sketch is that you need a Mac for it. How many people have a Mac? All right, most of the designers and a few other the developers, the lucky developers. Because normally your company's like a Mac, I'm not going to pay $1,000 more, just, you know. So the Sketch runs on the Mac. So if you have a Mac, go try Sketch, try the UI kits. If you don't have a Mac, go to our website, download some of these apps we've already done so you don't need Sketch, or just use the CLI, and you can get started building out these beautiful applications with very limited effort on your part, and you can really look like a hero to the folks back at the office. So I think my keynote time is running out. What I'll do is just a quick wrap up. My whole point of showing you that stuff today and talking about the opportunity in India, bringing in the design aspect of it, is because your applications are nothing unless they have some aspect of design to them. They need usability, they need appeal, and with that, you will actually have something that ends up being beautiful and successful. So I want to thank DJ, I want to thank everyone for coming today. Oh, npm just finished. Okay, cool. Just popped right in front of me. My email is jasonb@infragistics.com. If you guys have any questions or you want any links, we have a booth outside. But yep, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you very much. And now we have a moment of glory. May I request you, Jason, to please be on the stage for a moment?
Yes.
And I would like to invite Dhananjay Kumar and Manish Jain on the stage, please. And Shiv-Prasad Koirala, sir, please.
Good to see you.
And nobody leaves the room for
Yes,
a
I know.
moment.
It's like
Sponsors always meet each other.
at least twice a year. Oh, wow, thank you. I have the mic. Let's give it to DJ.
And do you know what is this? Guess what? Guess what is this? I did not hear you. Okay. Oh. That's a book launch for Dhananjay Kumar and its Angular Essentials that you have right in your hand right now. Jason, I would like to request Jason, Shiv sir, and Manish Jain sir to say something about this book.
Oh, I have it right here.
So, congrats, Dhananjay, DJ. So I think, a person, I have already given my testimonials, so a person who has lived Angular, I feel so, like he brought Angular NG India to India, right? So I think a person who is writing this book definitely knows what he is doing. So congrats, Dhananjay, and I hope the best for you. Yep.
congratulations, Dhananjay, for this book. And I believe we are going to have a great success with this book. And using this platform, I would like to invite everybody to share your knowledge to change the lives of millions with us. I believe all of us are here because we read some good books in our life. So be one of those and make the changes to life. Thank you. I think Dhananjay should also come on the stage.
DJ, let me speak.
Yeah.
Let me compliment you.
Okay, did anyone miss to receive the book, copy of a book? Anyone? Did everyone receive the copy of the book? You got a copy? Did anyone miss? No? Okay. Please.
So DJ, will you be available for autographs later? Signed. Everyone wants a signed copy. First edition signed copy.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes. So we know DJ does not like to be looked at attention. That's why he's very limited on social media, and you never hear from him. But we want to, at Infragistics, like DJ said, he's a developer evangelist, and he's so passionate about training, education, helping people. When he started down the Angular path, he grabbed onto it. So I want to congratulate him, thank him, and congratulate him on this very exciting work. Writing a book is very hard, and hopefully all of you get to enjoy this now and learn something from it. So great job, DJ.
I would like him to sign a copy for me at least.
And one moment, please. I would request everyone to raise your copy of the book like this. We need a photo. Yes. So I request you to do this, please. 1 second. Please keep your hands like this. I understand the pain, but 1 second. We need a perfect moment.
Wow. Everybody's acting.
Nobody hides it, huh?
Wow.
Are we good? Fantastic.
Thanks
Thank
a
you
lot.
very much, guys.